Serenbe is a place where the innate connections humans have with nature and all living things is celebrated through work and play. And we're here to tell the stories of those who have been inspired by this biophilic way of life in our community and across the country. This is Serenbe Stories. Yoli Ouiya is passionate about sustainability and wellness and is best known for her eco-lifestyle portal, Yoli's Green Living, which earned her the moniker Queen of Green by Black Enterprise magazine. Her self-professed first passion, though, is food, and when COVID struck the world in early 2020, she turned her focus to food equity, co-founding the Food and Wellness Equity Collective. The collective is a diverse group of content creators and entrepreneurs committed to being change agents for equity, diversity, and anti-racism in the food and wellness industries. In this episode, Yoli, Steve, and I reminisce about our kindred connection when we met in 2017 in New York at the Global Wellness Summit, which then brought Yoli to our first Biophilic Leadership Summit at Serenbe. We talk about how Wholesome Wave, SNAP, and the Rodale Institute are impacting food policy on a national and local level, how Yoli is changing the face of food and wellness by providing a safe place to talk about these issues, and how we can all share the plate. But first, Serenbe Stories is brought to you by the Inn at Serenbe. The Inn is nestled in the rolling countryside of bucolic Serenbe, where guests can walk on the 15 miles of trails through preserved forest land, the wildflower meadow, and the animal village. You can relax by the pool, hot tub, or in rocking chairs on the wraparound porch, play on the croquet lawn, swings, and in-ground trampolines. Connect with nature and each other, all while staying in luxurious rooms on the inn grounds or within the community of Serenbe. Book your stay today at serenbeinn.com. Welcome back, everybody, to Serenbe Stories. Today we have a special treat. We are talking with Yoli Ouiya, who's a very good friend of ours, and she's also known as the Queen of Green.
Thank you. I try.
And then I've got Steve Nygren here. I see that he's in, you guys can't see it, but he is sitting in his backyard recording this, which looks lovely.
Always looks lovely. Hi, Steve.
Hello. So good to see you again, even if we're on video.
Hey, new times, new adjustments.
I know, right? The world is on Zoom, so here we are. And you're in New York right now. That's where you live.
Yeah.
But you have been to Serenbe before, but we met you at the Global Wellness, Summit press event in 2017. Is that right?
Yes, and I think it was 2017 and maybe 20. Were you there the year before as well?
We were there in 17 and 18.
Okay, so yeah, then it was 17.
Mm-hmm. And then we invited you to the Biophilic Leadership Summit, and I believe you came in 2018.
Yes.
But I wanted just to say welcome back. It's so good to see your face. And then I ran into you in New York last fall.
Yes, we did randomly at, I want to say, Raising the Green Bar event at the Hearst building.
Yep, another Hearst building event. But we wanted to have you on and find out everything that you've been up to. There's a lot of exciting news, but also talk about your background. And our theme for this whole season is biophilia. And so that is something that we want to talk about as well. But really wanted to just to kick off with how did you get involved with the Global Wellness Summit? I guess, how did you come into our life to begin with? How did you end up that day in January at the Hearst Tower in 2017?
Well, someone did their thorough research looking for sustainable and wellness-focused content creators. And I believe I got an email from, I believe it was probably Beth, saying, hey, do you want to come to our Global Wellness Institute press event? Well, you'll find out the latest and greatest in terms of the wellness industry as a whole. And I said, absolutely, because data is super important to at least be able to curate content and keep people informed about things that are coming up in the wellness industry. And they have a really thorough process in creating these case studies and white papers. So once I knew about them, I was hooked and enjoy a lot of the events that they typically put on. So it was a good opportunity for me to get more information that could always be utilized in some capacity.
Yeah. Are you planning to go to the Breakers in Florida at their institute, their big summit this year?
No.
Nobody's traveling. Yeah.
No, people are traveling. I know a lot of people actually personally traveling for both personal and for vacation and leaving to just take a break someplace else. For me right now, because I have like immune compromised issues at times and they come and go, but right now they've been pretty stable. I'm not in a position. I'm like, I'll just defer like any travel outside of New York.
Yep.
Like I'll go to New York upstate, but any outside New York, I'm going to defer to next year. Like Florida, well, maybe Florida will still be there next year.
They're optimistic. So I think you'll definitely have a good number of people going, but I totally get
Absolutely.
it. Tell us how you got the moniker Queen of Green. I want to hear your background. I want you to tell our listeners sort of, were you always interested in wellness or what was your journey?
I was always interested in food because I love food. And I, one day I had a bet with my partner, and he bet me I couldn't be vegan for 2 weeks. And my ego was highly inflated back then at the time. And I said, well, I bet you I can. So I changed my diet for 2 weeks, noticed, a difference. I said, well, let me keep going to see what else will come of this process. And 2 weeks turned into a few months, turned into a few years. So I was vegan for like over 13, almost 15 years. And then now I say I'm plant-based, not plant exclusive, because as with any mature thinking person, your body is always changing and the needs of your body is always changing. Mm-hmm. So now I adapt. I say I'm plant-based, not plant exclusive. Yeah, for that purpose.
No, I'm with you on that. I sort of like the idea that I can eat whatever I want, but I'm just very thoughtful about it and more focused on plants.
Right. And the majority of my food is always plants, because grains, vegetables, like that's highly an integral part of the process. But if I need manuka honey to heal a wound, I'm going to use it. So as a result of all of this and me having a catering business, I started a blog called Yoli's Green Living.
Yep.
Within a year and a half or 2 years of me starting that blog, it actually started out as my name, YoliOuiya.com. And then I transitioned to Yoli's Green Living because it's like, oh, let me document like how I'm going about this whole sustainability thing and my own personal development around that. I was already doing it for catering business and food, but I wasn't necessarily talking about my process in my everyday life. Mm-hmm. So within a year and a half, 2 years of me starting the blog, Black Enterprise Magazine named me as one of their top 20 bloggers of that particular year. And the person who wrote about my profile referred to me as the Queen of Green.
I love it.
So that's where that whole moniker comes from. So I was like, oh, that should be my new mantra. So I will gladly wear the crown of sustainability at any given moment.
I love it. Well, and we love monikers when reporters bring those out. I know Steve in an article with Men's Health UK called him the Willy Wonka of wellness.
That is such an accurate description.
So next time we're together, we need to dance and have a caption. Here's the Queen of Green.
The Willy Wonka of wellness. I love that.
Right. I mean, I think you just like you could have, you would have never named yourself that, but it really fits. So when you came to the Biophilic Leadership Summit, had you known or really were aware of what that term meant of biophilia at all?
Not at all. So that was a great educational process for me in terms of understanding coming to comprehend what biophilic meant and how it is such an indigenous thing for cultures prior to modern times, and how urbanization kind of pulled us away from that form of natural living. Like it's the most natural form of living that you could have. Mm-hmm. And it is in accordance with equity, if you will, natural law. Yep. The natural law of living is being in full respect and honor of nature, and living in accordance with the environment and not trying to push it in the way that you want it or bend it to your will, but be in harmony. So when I learned about the term biophilic, I was like, oh, ho, ho, ho. This is what I've been like, this is what I've strived for in my own personal life, minus, the lack of trees and really integrated into nature. But this is all the other aspects of my life fit this paradigm. So that's why when I learned about that, and then I also learned about nature deficit disorder from Steve. So when I heard about that, I was like, oh, that's my condition. I'm losing it. I'm nature deficient. I understand it now. This would explain why I'm so excited when I travel and go to other places. But I'm also from my indigenous background. And when I say indigenous, my father's from West Africa. Our tribe has some nomadic tendencies in our background. So I love traveling. I love going to other places. I love integrating myself and being immersed in the culture of wherever I am. And I'm really, even though I'm like, what's the new term for like, it's an omnivert. I have my introvert side, meaning when I'm home, I'm here, I'm sustained, I am well. When I'm outside, I will talk to a stranger in a heartbeat.
Yep.
So nature deficit disorder became like just like my calling card. And also I talk about Serenbe like I invented it myself, literally. Like all the time. Like it's ridiculous. Especially people who live in Atlanta. I have a lot of friends, CEOs of wellness and food companies. I've introduced people to Serenbe, at least a couple of people every few weeks. So it's my go-to example of this is how we should be living. This is the best means of creating community, if you will. And I'm always amazed at the advancements that you keep making in terms of building this community that is very integral and in tune with nature.
And we've really noticed during the pandemic, it's become more obvious in the, people have been able to stay connected and how important it is to connect to nature in these times. How are you dealing with this now, being in your New York apartment?
That's a great question. I have always been kind of like a fake plant mom, but for my birthday, which was a month ago, one of my co-founders sent me a beautiful plant, and I was like, I need more of these. And I also had committed to starting to grow my own and documenting that process of growing my own in an urban environment. So that's one of the ways I am like coming to terms. And I'm also considering moving like everybody else, because I think it's just like, if you're going to, one thing that has come out of this pandemic is you should have an opportunity to do the things you're passionate about and enjoy your life the way you intend on enjoying it. They shouldn't be focused on the parameters of what success looks like or what other parameters are socially constructed. Like your social construct should be of your own making.
Yeah.
And I said, well, my own making would be kind of super hippie homesteader, live off the land, be surrounded by nature, have access to streams of water in some capacity. So in looking to make that transition, I still have to be where I am in the moment. So make the best of it. So plants, adding more plants, eating well is super important. I eat mostly everything organic. I'm grateful and privileged to have access to a food co-op here in the city. It's the only food co-op in the city where we get a lot of local produce. 4th Street Food Co-op. I've been a member there for over 15 years.
Nice.
And those are the things that are those are my moments of serenity, is eating well, preparing good food, keeping in touch with family. I was my sister's doula about 3 weeks ago. Is it 3 weeks? Yeah, about 3.5 weeks ago.
Well, congratulations.
So that was
being an
thank you. I'm like, this is my 3rd time being an auntie, but 1st time being a doula for any of my siblings.
It's a big deal.
So seeing new life still being able to come out of all of this has just given me like a little kick in the butt to be like, just keep going. And yeah, you're going to have moments, or I have moments, and being totally accountable, I have moments where I'm like, I don't want to do anything. And that is okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to do anything in that moment or that day, that is your mental health trying to tell you, take a break. Stop trying to be superwoman, super person, and just relax. And then, because if you are in good health, you have tomorrow. Like, be blessed and be grateful that you know if you're in good health, you have tomorrow.
I love that. That's perfect. I love that. Yeah, I do think that we don't give ourselves enough time for us. That it's been such a go culture that we're in, or society. And I think, the COVID, and this isn't a new thought at all, but it has made everybody stop and think and really say, what is it that I wanted to be doing, or really, how do I want to be spending my time? Right. And so doing those things that are important, but I still think that there's a huge need for, and the word like self-care maybe seems strange, but like for like, what do you need? And not having that be a selfish thing, have it be okay to take the time to do nothing.
Absolutely.
To say, for a walk for an hour, and everything will be there when I get back, and it'll be
yes. And I have so much empathy for parents right now who are juggling this new paradigm. Mm-hmm. I was just talking to someone, one of the founding members from my collective. Mm-hmm. She has 4 kids from between the ages of 1 and 9.
Wow. And
traversing this whole new paradigm, like homeschooling and the food and mommy. Like, there's a lot of things. And, her husband works during the day. So it's just trying to find the balance of all of these new paradigms. I comprehend that when you have a moment to yourself, or if you live by yourself, just be grateful, because it could be a different, you can have a whole different reality. Mm-hmm. And there are people who I know who've had COVID and been affected by it months ago, and are still being affected with it to this day.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of different things. And the optimism I have on the other side is we have an opportunity to make a difference by choosing the public officials that we have in office who care and want to make sure that we are well, and taking moments to do what you can for people in your local neighborhood, and shopping locally and supporting smaller businesses. It's so sad when you see like restaurants you've known for years start to close because of all this. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel in some proverbial way, and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm creating it at the same time.
Well, and I think that's interesting because you've sort of birthed, if you will, right, with right? You and another woman.
Oh, yes.
A brand new collective just a past month or so, right?
Yes.
The Food and Wellness Equity Collective. So
absolutely.
So you're putting goodness out there. Tell us about that and where that idea came from.
So my co-founder and I were on the phone just having a random like catch-up conversation about all the craziness that was happening in the world, from the killing of George Floyd to Breonna Taylor, to pandemic, to adjusting to new life and all the craziness. And I had mentioned this idea of bringing together content creators who had an opportunity to utilize our voice in really positive ways for change. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, wow, I had literally had the same thought. And we had synergy just meeting in person at another event, and to have this like moment where we both had a similar vision, we started working on it that day. So it went from having a conversation about really like everything going on in our personal lives to, well, we're going to birth a collective. And knowing that we have no ownership over ideas, we can't patent this idea of bringing people together. Mm-hmm. in letting go of ownership of like a concept of that, we realized we needed other people to really push this along. So collaboration has been a mantra of mine for the last couple of years. And I realized, well, if I'm going to really make this happen, then we need some people who are just as passionate about anti-racism, equity, diversity, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
So we started doing our massive search for different content creators who were in the same mindset as us. Mm-hmm. And it was really easy for us to find all the people that we had. We got recommendations. We looked, primarily what we did is we went on people's social media pages and just to see how they were using their voice in that moment without anybody spurring or being performative. Mm-hmm. Because there was at different times, there've always been performative posts, but it was so blatantly obvious in different times. Yep. Are you using your voice to create justice and equity in your community by talking about it? Are you using your capacity to, if you have a large platform, how are you utilizing it? Are you just posting about everything you post about every time? Even though you know outside right now is not the normal that we know? Mm-hmm. Or are you being aware? Are you being empathetic? Are you having some kind of moment where you're using that empathy to address things that are happening? So that made it so much easier to like, okay, this person and that person and this person. So we have a wonderful collective, about 20, there's about 20 of us in total. Nice. And we just opened up our community to add more members. And right now, I think we're at 150.
Okay.
Thus far, we only opened it up 2 days ago.
And can people join? Tell us how they can get involved.
Oh, you can just go to foodwellnessequity.com. There is a Join Us tab, and then the instructions will lead you. So we're primarily focused on content creators of all kinds, health professionals, and solo entrepreneurs. Okay. We just announced our digital summit, our first digital summit, which is happening October 15th.
I saw that.
Yes.
Tell us all about that.
So we wanted to find a way to bring all these content creators to have a safe space for us to talk about all these different issues. So we're going to have a myriad of panelists and speakers just to help content creators and entrepreneurs and health professionals have an easier time of having these types of more challenging and difficult conversations, but also provide resources and support, because for a lot of content creators, we have one sole job. You do what you do. You do what you do well. Mm-hmm. You take great photos. You make wonderful dishes. You talk about health and wellness. Now people look to us more so than ever because everybody is home for the most part. Mm-hmm. The health and wellness sector and food is not going away. In fact, it is thriving at this very moment. Unparalleled amount of money being spent in the wellness space. So with that being said, well, are content creators being equitably treated in the space? That was our first concern, because a lot of content, they work with brands. Are men and women getting the same pay? Are Black women and Latina women and Asian women and Muslim women getting the same pay to their counterparts? And we were discovering, no, there isn't like a standard. So there are many different areas where you see, as we would call it, I call it my come to Jesus, Buddha, Allah moment, where everything is coming to light in some capacity, the positive, the negative, and people are exposing their experiences because now they feel like so much truth is being put out into the world. Yep. Now is the time to put the ship in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So that's where we're trying to tackle all of these things. And the beauty of the collective is it is transformed in so many beautiful ways that we didn't anticipate, because you have more than 2 people building this community.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we decided on to start focusing on is one of our areas. Well, there's 2 areas. One is food policy.
Okay.
Because that's super important. Food policy is part of can be racist.
Very much.
And there's environmental racism. So then we're like, okay, now this is something else we get to add to our agenda. So food policy, environmental justice, being a resource, also being helping dietitians and registered nutritionists and nutrition specialists find a voice, because I did not know less than 8% of nutritionists are people of color.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, we were like, people need information. So how do we help people feel comfortable talking about the things they eat and finding healthier options? And it's always imperative that people see representations of themselves in all spaces, so that they feel a level of comfort, or they feel a level of being understood in some capacity, especially with various cultural norms. So 2 of the women on our collective, one is Haitian American, another one is Jamaican American. And I think that's wonderful, because in the Caribbean community, like, you don't necessarily always see people in the health profession in terms of nutrition. So to have these varying vantage points where there are different ingredients that we use, there are different spices that different communities use, to have someone who can be able to speak to that helps everyone else be seen and heard. And I think that is just as important in terms of mental health. To be seen and heard is super imperative in our existence, because once people start not to feel seen and heard, that's where the line is drawn, and then you have conflict. And when you feel ignored, there's nothing but rage and anger and disappointment and hurt and an acknowledgement of, like, this is how we have always felt, but no one was listening. We were listening because we heard it, and it shouldn't be something that people can get accustomed to. It's very similar to the nature deficit disorder. Yeah, there's a acknowledgement or lack of acknowledgement in the person's human existence can draw the life out of someone, literally.
Well, and I think,
what are some of the big issues you're dealing with food policy?
So there's the Farm Bill that one of our collective members brought up, Agatha Chindu, love her, one of my favorite people. Founder of Yummy Spoonfuls, which is an organic food company for toddlers and children. And saying how important that bill is in terms of allocation of funds. Having supply of good food. Another issue in the food world is lack of funding for actual good food. Not all this genetically modified, pesticide-ridden things that also contribute greatly to disease and poor health, frankly. Another issue that I've seen many times is food deserts. That's a big thing. There are so many. And the beauty of some of the work I've done in the past, especially when I was working on a campaign with Toyota for over 5 years, is setting up community gardens in different places and supporting community gardens in places where there were food deserts. So I believe those are the main components: is lack of funding for the stuff that matters, which is farmers, both small and large, investing in good, clean, equitable food places, and food deserts. And then food disparity in general. Like, people don't necessarily have access to stores. I understand that I'm privileged. I live in Manhattan. I'm in the middle of a city where I can literally walk out my door and have 10 stores at my disposal. That is not the case in every place in the world. And I've been there, especially in the United States. So these are just some of the imperative issues that we're going to have to address, because a lot of us are going to be home. We eat more when we're home. I know I do.
I was going to say, have you found good programs that are models to address these?
Who's doing it right?
There is one cool program I did see recently, and it is the free food refrigerator. I can't say exactly who started it, but I've seen instances of it where people will have like on a block in the middle of a block connected to a store where there's a refrigerator and people can put food into the refrigerator for people to get for free.
That's great. Are you familiar with Wholesome Wave?
No.
Okay.
Oh, Wholesome Waves, the company.
It's a nonprofit. Michelle Nishan. We'll send you information on it.
It started out.
Oh, yes, please.
Started out in New York, but they do they do a bunch of different things. But one of the things that they do is they take the SNAP dollars and they double them at farmers markets.
Oh, like the green market.
Yes. Yeah, they've been integral in getting.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I know about the green market. I live not far from a green market. It's one of my favorite places to go. And that's another thing that one of the things we're going to address is my dream project is to do something with SNAP.
Oh.
Because a lot of people don't know that you can go to the farmer's market, trade in your SNAP dollars, and get more money to spend on produce and the like. So one of the things we wanted to do is possibly, if anyone's listening who has a connection to the SNAP executives, is we wanted to do some digital programming specifically for SNAP and WIC recipients. We
can connect you with Wholesome Wave because they're the ones who instituted this program and have fought in Congress to get that money into the Farm Bill.
I think that is absolutely fantastic and absolutely necessary. And I think on our side, we wanted to be the change makers to provide this information to people because a lot of people didn't know. When I was a nutrition specialist for a children's after school program, I had over 400 students between the grades of 1 through 12. And one of the programs that we had was giving them, taking like a field trip to the farmer's market and explaining, hey, if you get SNAP, you can use your money here. I remember one student in particular, he was a senior. His mom had to leave for a month to go back to her country to handle some things. He's a senior. He's like, I'm going to be home for a couple of weeks by myself. And I was like, well, are you going to cook? He's like, yeah, I would like to. So we took a trip to the farmer's market. I gave him some like SNAP dollars that we had received to disperse to the community. He bought a bunch of things he had never used, never cooked in his life. A week later, he started showing me all the dishes and the new things he was cooking because he didn't know. He's like, I didn't know this stuff was here.
Yeah.
So just creating awareness and giving people options and letting them know that they have a welcome space, a welcome opportunity to go into these spaces. Because sometimes you go to a farmer's market and you're like, oh, I didn't know, like, I don't know if this place is for me.
Yeah.
And that's a thing where representation matters. People assume because what it looks like on the outside that they may not be welcome there or may not feel safe in that particular environment. Mm-hmm. So that's the blessing of New York. It's such a hodgepodge of different people and communities and cultures and genders and preferences that when I hear about things happening outside of here, it's not surprising, but at the same time, it's baffling because that's not how I grew up. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's just interesting to see these different things. And of course, Serenbe and your farm, love your farm. The Serenbe farm is like one of my favorite places. Like the composting, composting machines to the mushrooms, it's a good framework.
Well, and you might also look at Atlanta because Atlanta is the first major city to have an ag commissioner reporting directly to the mayor. And the way they're dealing with food deserts is they're going in and putting community gardens and farms into these communities and teaching people how to grow the food and what some of these products are. And they own their garden and the pride that comes into the community. So it's a great model more cities need to look at.
Yes, absolutely.
Rodale Institute is doing a lot of things with training farmers and soil health. And in fact, their big award winning was a woman of color who was the outstanding farmer who's really moved these things forward in South Georgia. Mm-hmm. So there's really some great things that we'll try to connect you with to help push out these models that are out there.
Well, and ask Agatha from Yummy Spoonful. She's been here. I swear we did like a workshop with her like 4 years ago.
Oh yeah, she probably has.
Yeah, so her work has been phenomenal, trying to get good food into kids.
And I think one of the great things is that community gardens can be kind of just an eye-opening experience for everyone involved, even the people who have the education and the know-how. And there's an organization in Nashville, Tennessee, by a colleague and friend of mine called Trap Garden. And it's turning the concept of a trap house, which doesn't necessarily have positive connotations, turning it on its head and saying, well, let's do a garden instead, and educating myriads of people how to garden and creating programming around that and giving people opportunity to learn how to grow their own and providing resources and doing curriculum in schools and so forth and so on. So I thought his model of creating it, we call him Rob Veggies, Horton is his name, and he created this program really just because he lived in the food desert and he was tired of being in the food desert. And he said, well, let's learn how to grow some of this stuff ourselves. So that way and he loves that. And he does love, his middle name is Veggies because he really does love vegetables as much as I do.
Yeah.
The minimum thing we could be doing in our schools is anyone who graduates should at least know how to grow and prepare their own food. And we have really failed our society. And as citizens, we need to get involved with school boards and start demanding that change. Home ec is no longer for sissies. It's something that everyone should take. And, let's maybe rework it for today. But, that's an essential piece of education.
Absolutely. It's imperative that people have an opportunity to know how we lived before modernization, and to know where their food comes from. Because I think that's one of the biggest growing things I had is once I started eating differently and being more conscious of what I was ingesting, then I became more curious about where my food was coming from. Mm-hmm. Then I delved a little bit deeper into that, okay, well, how far is my food traveling? Okay, it made me comfortable to ask farmers at the farmers market when I was first moving into a more holistic focused lifestyle. What are you using to your pest control? And when you ask in an honest, and having an honest conversation with a farmer, they'll be like, oh, I use such and such for a part of the year with very minimal, but at least you have the information. And that's the transparency is key. And that's, I think, is what's missing heavily in the industry, where there are moments where people are like, oh, we have non-GMO labeling. And there was pushback on that but why would you push back from people knowing if you have a genetically modified organism that you're consuming?
There's only one reason.
Yeah. So
and it's in most of our food sources.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. And I remember taking a trip to, I believe it's Idaho, and just meeting with farmers who had been kind of, misinformed about what they thought they were doing good.
Yeah.
By doing this work. And it was so disheartening to see the people who are growing food for the masses, are in debt. Mm-hmm. The cost of industrial farming is just atrocious. Why do you have to be in debt and spend millions of dollars to grow food that is going to feed the entire country? And the crazy part is they had been sold into this vision of growing food to export to other places.
Yeah.
If we had repurposed that land, did some soil revitalization, we would have millions of pounds of food just for us domestically. So it's just a whole reformatting and restructuring of what food integrity means, and what that system looks like. And I hope through the Food and Wellness Equity Collective that we can begin to have some of these conversations. And I'm tired of talking. I want people to put their money where their mouth is and support these initiatives. And it doesn't mean the general population. We're calling to task the food and wellness industry. Mm-hmm. Well, support us in making a difference in these communities. And all of our members want to do on the ground programming in their particular cities.
Right.
And
it's the market with their buying power that are going to change this. All the talking in the world is not going to do it. And even policy has trouble, but buying power will change it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things we're exploring is do we fare better as a nonprofit? Will we be able to take funds and allocate them to places where it's needed? There are so many different organizations out here doing some of this work. And I just want to be the change I want to see in the world. And that's why we started the collective, because instead of me just talking about it and being a content creator and talking about these issues, yes, I'm providing a resource in terms of education. People send me notes all the time asking me, hey, do you have a suggestion for this or for that? I want to also do on the ground work where people are actually seeing an impact versus me talking about being impactful. I think that's where real influence comes in. Real influence comes from being able to help people make a difference in their lives and not just surface rhetoric, if you will.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that I do another sort of, COVID silver lining, if there is such a thing, is that more of that is happening. People like yourself are coming together, banding together with people saying, we're all going to do this together, because we'll have power in that collective.
Right.
And I know you definitely getting on the ground and doing the work, but I will say, coming together and doing a narrative and trying to tell the story, whether that's SNAP dollars exist or here's how we can, combat food deserts, even getting that information out to the general public is so important. And when you have content creators and influencers across all these industries like you do, I think that important. It's so important. And, I'm excited to share, that story with our listeners. Because we can't do it alone. We can make steps,
Absolutely,
but we have to do it all together.
Thank you so much. I think there's twofold. I'm a content creator, but I'm also a business owner. I'm an entrepreneur. I understand that money needs to be made because it also needs to go back out.
Sure.
We need to create an ecosystem that is a healthy balance of all of these things. It's not just to give to help people. Mm-hmm. No, let's create a system where people are supporting your business. Show some support back to the consumers who are supporting and helping your business thrive or stay afloat or whatever the case may be. Let's have a healthy ecosystem of give and take on both sides. Mm-hmm. And also let people feel like their investment and their belief in your product is worth something. There have been brands who I've seen do amazing things. And as a result of them making those verbal commitments and putting their money where their mouth is, I've seen people make statements like, oh, I'm going to buy this brand of this product from this company exclusively from now on.
Mm-hmm.
That makes a difference.
It makes the whole difference because people feel like you've invested in them personally, even though they may not be the personal recipients of your giving. They feel like you're investing in their community or into people maybe close to them in some capacity, and they see that you're actually trying to make a difference and you're not just doing it for surface purposes. And I appreciate that. And then on the other side of that conversation is, yes, invest and all that stuff, but is your inner organization equitable?
Yep.
You can do all this stuff that's outside of the company, but is there equity within your company? Mm-hmm. Or is there enough people of color? Are there enough women in executive roles? Are there diversity in terms of just the pay structure and making sure people are getting paid what they need to live and thrive and not just survive?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the biggest thing. There's so many of us, and I'm not taking myself out of that equation, that we have gone and ebbed and flowed out of survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just financially, that's emotionally, that's psychologically, that's all of these things where it's like a constant flight. Is it fight or fight or
yeah.
fight and flight, essentially. And that's not, yes, that is part of the human experience in terms of when we live in amongst nature, we'd be like, okay, is that bear coming back to take her food? But in these times, I don't feel, well, it's not necessarily a feeling. I don't believe people should have to live like that.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty of biophilia, is bringing it all back to how do we live in accordance with each other and with nature. If we can move from that place, it will find some type of equilibrium. Yeah. Without those central paradigms of our existence, it makes it a lot more challenging to find the the silver, in my instance, the gold lining.
Yeah. I don't even know what else to say. You've been so articulate and put that so beautifully at the end here. I don't really have anything to add except that I completely agree with you and like just love that we all know each other and hopefully we're trying to put the good out into the world.
Absolutely. I'm a fan of Serenbe, have been for a while, and it definitely shifted my paradigm of what is possible in terms of living and living fully, but also living in harmony. And I think if we aspire to that, we'll make a major shift in what is happening from all things from climate change to how we deal in race relations to just having more equity for everyone.
Yeah. And we should always remember, sustainability, equity, inclusion, these are not extras. These are not the frosting on the cake. These are the things.
Those are the norms.
Mm-hmm.
They're the platter for the cake.
Yes. And I'll share your hashtag is share the plate is your hashtag.
Oh, yes. That was for our conversation.
But I love that. I love that in so many ways. Share the plate.
Absolutely. Food brings us all together in some capacity. If you don't like food, I apologize. I don't know what food did to you. Food brings us all together. Food is the and I remember that's one of the best times of having at Serenbe is us sitting around food and just having these types of conversation. Yeah. And it makes it easier. People relax, people reminisce, and it brings them to a place of just, hey, we're eating well. This is like a good starting point. Where else can we go from here?
Yeah. Well, we hope to have you back around the dinner table or any table.
Absolutely. Listen, we need this pandemic to just go away, go back from wherever, like underneath the ground and just be dormant for the next 100,000 years and never come back. And that way we can go back to having community and dinners and just being in a space where we can love each other. Yeah. And it'll happen.
It will.
Well, look forward to that day. And thank you for your voice in so many of these important issues.
And thank you, Steve, for being an example of the possibility that exists in this world. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Serenbe Stories. New episodes are available on Mondays. Please rate and review the podcast and visit our website to learn more about upcoming guests, episodes, and everything biophilia at serenbestories.com.